DFS Gin Nation. What is up? What is happening? We are back again for another week. And this week is going to be a doozy. A 14-game slate, biggest of the year. Just wait till next week when it's a 15-game slate. But regardless of that, it is week 17, a few more weeks away from the NFL playoffs. So this week is what I've been looking through pricing. One, I think on DraftKings, I think pricing is a little bit soft across the board. I also think, I don't know how much chalk there's actually going to be because there's so many options. I think it kind of levels out the playing field a little bit in terms of ownership. I just can't imagine so many people are, you're going to see a ton of just really high owned guys, which I think is a good thing. Because I think guys like, just immediately what stood out to me just off the top of my head, Antonio Brown at 6,100 is incredibly too cheap for him, especially in the 15 targets he saw last week. Amon-Ra St. Brown and his 12 targets a week he continues to see, and he's only 6K. But regardless of that, Maddie, how you doing?
Doing good, man. I completely agree. These big slates, we tend to have ownership a bit more spread out, so it's definitely not as much of worrying about fading guys as it is locking in on the plays that you think have the most upside. And I know we try to do that, every week, but this week more so than what we usually say. You won't hear us say, just be different, try to be different. This week is more of, with 14 games, it's more of player guys and ownership should be flat enough that it shouldn't really matter.
Yeah, and I think for this week, there's kind of two games that I think that really stand out to me in terms of games that I think most people are going to target, and that's the Chiefs-Bengals and the Cowboys and Cardinals games. Those are the only two games, at least last look, that were above a 50 total, and so I think that's where most of the ownership is going to come in. But I think there's a lot of other ways you can get a little bit different. I think there's some of these games that I want to attack certain sides of the game. And then, I will say this, there is some weather concerns for some of these games this week as well. The Atlanta-Buffalo game, it looks like there is going to be a possibility of snow for that game. So that could, change a little bit. But I didn't see anything with like major wind concerns, which is a positive.
Yeah, so it looks like the Chicago game has got 15 to 20 mile an hour winds, which we weren't going to play offenses from there anyways, but that's worth noting for the Bears defense. Facing the Giants. But outside of that, you've got Buffalo, 10 to 15 miles an hour, doesn't do anything for me. The Tennessee-Miami game, 10 to 15, doesn't do anything for me. It's the Kansas City-Cincinnati game, 10 to 15, doesn't do anything for me. It's really mainly that Giants and Chicago game that's got the worst weather. And that one is somewhere we're not going to really play offensive pieces anyways outside of David Montgomery. So, and the defense. So, I don't, if people start talking about weather, just ignore it. You really only adjust your expectations for passing games and kicking and all that when winds get up sustained over 15 miles an hour. That's when it starts to, have an effect. And it does have an effect. We saw that what was it, that Buffalo Patriots game a couple weeks ago where Mac Jones threw the ball 3 times. So the wind does have an effect. So that is the big thing to look at, but really only one game this week that has that 15 plus mile an hour sustained threshold. And that's the Chicago game, which, like I said, Montgomery's really the only play from there.
I would agree. Well, let's just go ahead and jump right into this because with all of these different options, I think it's going to take a little bit longer than normal. I don't know if it's as straightforward as usual. So we go, as always, game by game, not game by game, play position by position. So let's kick things off at the quarterback position, like always. Starting things off, Josh Allen at 8K, Patrick Mahomes at 7,800, Tom Brady at 7,600, Kyler Murray at 7,300, Matt Stafford at 7,100. A very, very extremely questionable, I don't know if he's going to play, Lamar Jackson at 7K. Joe Burrow, 6,900. Justin Herbert at 6,800. Dak Prescott, 6,700. Jalen Hurts at 6,600. Russell Wilson at 6,200. Taysom Hill at 6K. And that is the list for the 6K and above quarterbacks. So where are we starting at this week, Maddie?
Well, if Jimmy Garoppolo's out, you got to go all the way down to $4,800 Trey Lance against Houston, and he becomes very, very interesting. My concern, and I hate to say I have a concern with a $4,800 running quarterback, but my concern is especially if Elijah Mitchell plays, like these running backs can just take over and take all the touchdowns. But at the same time, Trey Lance is that Josh Allen, Cam Newton goal line style running back from the quarterback position once they get down and close. So, I mean, he himself can run for 2 touchdowns, and he's 4,800, and he gets the passing stats on top of that. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with Trey Lance just yet, because there are guys up at the top that I do want to play. And, I was watching you guys' y'all's show last night. Shout out Walito. Good to see him join you guys on that. But there was a lot of questions coming up. It was a lot of Burrow Brady questions that I felt like you guys got. And it seems like there's recency bias checking in on Tom Brady this week, because everybody wants to bench him and everybody wants to play Burrow in their season-long leagues. And I feel like that's going to trickle over to DFS, especially with his $7,600 price tag on DraftKings. He's the 3rd highest QB. But what we've known with Brady in Tampa Bay is he's been all or nothing really on a week-to-week basis. Like, he will score you 35 to 40 points, or he's going to get you 16 to 20. He really hasn't had those in-between games. It's been we are going to attack you with Tom Brady this week, or we're not. We're going to run the ball. And while they can run the ball against the Jets, I just feel like this is a Tom Brady week. I mean, he's still in the MVP conversation. He's got a couple incentives with passing touchdowns and passing yardage that he's going to try to get to. Not that he needs it, but he's also got some incentives for AB on the way. And Mike Evans also needs a couple touchdowns for some incentives. So it's just a matchup with the Jets where you really can do whatever you want against them. You can throw the ball, you can run the ball. And if Tampa Bay says that we want to come out here and we want to let Tom Brady throw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns, he absolutely will do that. So while, yes, I do agree Ronald Jones can have a monster game here, and he absolutely can run for 125 yards and 2 scores, or 3 scores for that matter. But at the same time, if Tampa Bay goes out and scores 45 points, Tom Brady's throwing for 4 or 5 touchdowns. They're not going to run for all those touchdowns. So in a week where I think nobody's going to pay up for Brady against the Jets, I have interest there. I mean, he's got he scored 33 against Buffalo, 33 against Atlanta. Like, Atlanta, it feels like it's such a similar matchup, right? Like, nobody pegs Atlanta to keep pace with Tampa Bay on the other side. It's a game they won 30-17. Brady threw for 368 and 4. You scroll down earlier this year, 31 against New Orleans, 41 against Miami in a game they won 45-17. So another divisional matchup there. Another game against Atlanta, they won 48-25. He scored 31. So, I mean, it really is like when Tampa Bay doesn't take their foot off the gas, they continue to pile on points. And with the Godwin being out for the year too, and if Tampa Bay, feels like they need to pass the ball to win games in the playoffs, what better matchup to get live game reps than against the New York Jets? So I am very high on Tom Brady this week, and I'm not sure I'm going to get there to him, but he absolutely has a 40-point ceiling here against the Jets. And I think, if everybody's going to play Trey Lance down at the bottom of the barrel, paying up could be somewhat different, especially if people are going to play Mahomes and, Kyler Murray in that high total game. So I really do like Brady. Jalen Hurts is the other guy that I'm considering at 6,600 against Washington. We saw Hurts had one of his biggest games of the year against them. He threw for 296 yards and a touchdown, and ran for 2 touchdowns against Washington only 2 weeks ago. Checked in with 30 DraftKings points, which is his 3rd highest score of the year. So definitely think Jalen Hurts is interesting to save that 1K salary off of Brady. 6,600 isn't breaking the bank for him, and is a guy that's going to continue to run the ball. And especially if Jordan Howard's out, right? They're already going to be without Miles Sanders. And so if it's just Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell is dealing with an injury himself too. So that's even more rushing equity that Jalen Hurts gets at the goal line, and they may have to throw the ball a little bit more against a pass funnel Washington defense. So I think Jalen Hurts is the other guy that I'm going to have heavy interest in. So it's really a three-headed monster for me at QB this week. Tom Brady up at the top, Jalen Hurts in the middle, and Trey Lance down at the bottom.
Just the disrespect for Matt Stafford. Just the disrespect.
I know. I will have Rams pass catchers absolutely 100%. There's just something about that game that kind of concerns me. The Rams have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The 10th highest total this week the Rams have. They're outdoors at Baltimore, traveling west to east. The total is 46.5. I don't know. I love Stafford. I played him last week and he shit the bed, and this isn't recency bias. I don't know. And that Baltimore secondary is horrible. I mean, we just saw Burrow just go for 500 yards and how many touchdowns against them. So it's definitely not a matchup thing. It's just, I don't know. He's definitely in play. Don't get me wrong. I just don't know that I'm going to end up there.
So I think with Stafford, I think if I have a Ram stack, I don't think I'm going to have Cooper Kupp in it. One, I mean, we've seen it bet up. I mean, it opened at a 42.5. It's up to a 46.5. And then it also weirdly the Rams.
That's probably from the QB news that Huntley's going to play instead of Josh Johnson, I would think.
And then no, I mean the Ravens opened as favorites in this game.
Interesting.
They were 3-point favorites, and obviously, and the Rams implied point total was 19.75, and now they're up to a 25.5. Why they were open so low, I don't know. It doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah,
I mean,
hell,
weird. The Panthers had a higher implied point total opening than what the Rams did. I don't get it, but it is up to a 25.5. The game's up to a 46.5. And I think this game with Huntley, I think this game has some real shootout potential here. We know the Rams secondary is absolutely terrible. And even though I think they are getting a couple of pieces back, but they're still nothing what they were. And so I just think with Stafford at 7,100, but I'm not going to I'm going to probably have 0 Cooper Kupp this week. 0. At 9,500, he has to absolutely smash, right? And on this big of a slate with this many options, there are going to be players that are much cheaper than him that are going to be in the same realm as him, right? Be able to put up the same points. Okay. And paying 9,500 for him, it is going to make your lineup very you're not going to be very unique. A lot of people are going to have to run the same build and go to the same strategy.
I mean, Trey Lance, Cooper Kupp.
Yes, and I'm not about that life. And so I think Odell Beckham makes for a great stacking partner with him.
I love that.
Since he has been with the Rams, I think he's like wide receiver 14 since that time. He's been almost a borderline wide receiver 1. He's substantially cheaper. And so I think I would just rather do that than paying all the way up for Cooper Kupp. And if you just want to play one-offs, I think that's fine too. But I think Stafford against this pass funnel offense or defense, for the Ravens. I mean, they're $7,100. At $7,100, I don't mind that. He's cheaper, and people don't. I don't think he's going to come up with that much ownership. I think people are just going to play Kupp or they're going to play Sony Michel, and I don't think Sony Michel's a great play, that great of a play, especially if he's going to be a little bit chalky. Because the Rams, the one thing the Ravens do is do a very good job against the run. I mean, even last week, Joe Mixon, he put up a lot of points, but that came on like a 50-yard reception that he had for a touchdown. But I think he ran 18, 19 times for only 65 yards. Like he didn't do a lot on it. It wasn't on the ground.
You can't really run on Baltimore. It's their defense is. I mean, honestly, because of the cornerback personnel they have, when they started the year and what they've had over the last couple of years, they're built, to pressure the QB and trust their cornerbacks to have success on the outside. And with all the injuries, I mean, they're still just playing the same style of defense. And, we targeted MVS 2 weeks ago when Green Bay played because you attack, these deep shot wide receivers against Baltimore. So that's MVS. And since OBJ has come in to the Rams, Van Jefferson has kind of taken the Robert Woods role and taken the very short targets and, been the possession guy. And OBJ has seen the deep targets down the field. So I'm with you 100%. Even if you're not stacking with Stafford, I love OBJ this week, which we can talk about when we get to wide receiver. But yeah, I see that, and that's kind of why I am probably not going to end up on Stafford, because I feel like if you play Stafford, you kind of have to play Kupp, because the only way Stafford throws 4 touchdowns is if Kupp catches 2. I mean, unless, 1 goes to Higbee and 2 go to OBJ and, 1 goes to Van Jefferson. I guess that's possible. But, I mean, the likelihood of that happening is slim. So if you're getting a ceiling game from Stafford, I just feel like, it would be Kupp and one of the wide receivers, whether it's Van or OBJ.
Yeah, but I feel like a lot of what people talk about, like, I can get exposure through Stafford through playing player A, right? But I think you can get exposure through Kupp through playing Stafford, right? Like, it's fine for a Kupp can go out and have 8 for 120 and a score, right? And good game.
Yeah, he can get you upper 20s and not sink you if you don't play. That means
nothing that he's going to like that's not enough for him.
He needs 35. He needs 35.
Yes.
35 to 40 for you to, if you don't play him. He needs 35 to 40 for you to be like, oh shit, I don't have Cooper Kupp. If he scores 28 and you don't have Kupp, you're chilling.
Right. That's how I feel about it. So I don't know. I do like Stafford a fair amount at 7,100. I will say this year, it feels like almost every single time the games that everybody thinks are like the smash spots that you have to have all the exposure to don't pan out. And there's something about this Chiefs-Bengals game and really this Arizona-Dallas game that just kind of worries me a little bit, more so the Chiefs game. Because one, the Chiefs situation can get weird because, Patrick Mahomes will spread the ball around and you can get some Michael Burton touchdowns and some Derek Gore touchdowns. And
Byron Pringle double tutty.
Yes, that happens. Which we were all about Byron Pringle last week. That was the guy that we wanted, and he went off 2 touchdowns. And so, but at 7,800, I'm going to obviously have some Chiefs stacks. It's just I don't anytime the Chiefs are on the board, you got to play them. I think I would prefer stacking them with Tyreek this week than Kelsey. I'm a little concerned because we've seen even last week. We found out after the game. Of course, this information would be handy to have before the game, but they're never going to tell us this. That Tyreek Hill was completely exhausted during that game, and he said the COVID really had an effect on him. That's why he only had 2 targets, only played 42% of snaps. I am somewhat concerned. The same thing with Kelsey this week, with him coming off COVID and everything, right? And so that would be my only concern with Kelsey, especially as expensive as he is. But so I'm going to go there. But the other one, I mean, I want Huntley to play because Huntley's only $5,600. He was up to like 6,500, I believe. When he got last week, when he got put on COVID. But before he got put on COVID, when his pricing came out, he was 6,500, and then he was out due to COVID. But now he's back down to 5,600, and he's played really well. Like, the Packers' defense is really good, and he dropped 35 DK points against them. And, obviously it's good for Mark Andrews as well, his favorite target. But he's shown that he could be a competent passer, right? And he's great on the ground. 73 rushing yards the last time that he played against Green Bay. 215 passing yards, 2 touchdowns in that game, 35 and a half. I mean, then the 3 games that he has started, 40 yards rushing, 45 yards rushing, and 73 at 5,600 is too tough to pass up.
Yeah, I agree. If you love that game, I almost prefer Huntley to Stafford and just double dip the Rams wide receivers with Huntley on the other side. Because, I mean, if Stafford's throwing for a bunch, that likely means that Huntley's probably keeping pace on the other side. And he's $1,500 cheaper with rushing ability.
That is the truth. That is the truth. I guess, so are you not playing? Because, like, man, when you see Atlanta on the other side with Josh Allen, you're like, that is an absolute smash spot. An offense that it will throw the ball. It will. They don't care whether they're up by 40 or not. They're going to keep throwing the ball. So they do. They don't run the ball nearly as much. Although I will say it has been good to see Devin Singletary to get more involved. But he is kind of But regardless of that, is the weather would take you off Josh Allen, or at least what the weather's looking like with snow and everything else?
No, it's Tom Brady that's taking me off Josh Allen. If I'm picking between the two at the top, I'm taking Brady this week. Dude, it's just one of those things where it's like we get these Brady weeks where it's 5 touchdowns, and you're like, man, why didn't I just play Brady against this horrible defense? Like everybody's going to play Rojo. Everybody. And we've seen this before where Brady's chalk, Fournette's not. Fournette goes for 4 touchdowns. Fournette's chalk, Brady's not. Brady throws for 4 touchdowns. And I just feel like with Rojo going to be so popular this week, Brady and the pass catchers might, unless you're one-offing Antonio Brown, Brady, Evans, Gronk, AB, I just think the whole stack is going to be overlooked. And that's the reason why I'm not playing Josh Allen. Not anything, not a knock on Josh Allen at all. And you can play Josh Allen for all the same reasons that I like Tom Brady, right? I mean, a team that's favored by a lot and one of the highest totals on the slate. I mean, you got Tampa Bay is the highest, 29.5, and Buffalo's second highest at 29.25. So, I mean, you're splitting hairs here, really. Yeah, you can play Josh Allen.
Well, last but not least, let's talk about this Dallas game really quick before we move over to running backs. Kyler Murray and Dak. Which one would you prefer if you're going to play one? And are you going to have any exposure at all?
I'm not going to play either passing attack here. I mean, Arizona's pass defense has been actually really good this year, and you can run the ball in Arizona. And Dallas will run the ball when the opponent gives them the ability to. And I know Zeke has not been very good, but I mean, both him and Pollard mixed in, they will run those guys 35 times if they absolutely have to. And this Arizona passing attack, ever since DeAndre Hopkins went down, has really just flowed through Zach Ertz. And I mean, that doesn't really scream upside to me. And these wide receivers, these last 2 weeks, really, I mean, they lost to Detroit, and then last week they looked absolutely horrible as well. So, I mean, it took some late magic from Kyler to really, have a decent game, from a fantasy perspective last week. But, yeah, I am just kind of off that game in general. Everybody's priced up, and it is the highest total of the week. But it's I just feel like both offenses spread the ball around so much that no one guy is going to pay off his salary.
So I actually really like the Kyler Murray side here at 7,300. I think he's going to be very low owned. I think he has a 40-point ceiling, and I think with his rushing upside, we saw him last week. Really, the last couple of weeks, really start utilizing that again. Which is huge for him. He's only 7,300. Dallas can be had through the air. I will agree that their passing offense hasn't looked as good without DeAndre Hopkins back there. But I feel like they have enough with Christian Kirk, Zach Ertz, AJ Green. Rondale Moore sounds like he should be back this week. He was out last week against Indy. Both of them, him and James Conner, returned to practice today. But I like Kyler Murray, and I like going the opposite side here. I think people are going to want to play Dak, especially coming off that huge performance he just had, 35 DK points last week. And I like the Kyler Murray side, and I think people are going to feel the same way you feel about this passing offense. And I think Kyler Murray could, be in store for a 30-plus point game, and I don't think he's going to carry any ownership whatsoever. And I think he's a very easy player to stack because his passing options are cheap and aren't going to take a lot to get there. Christian Kirk, 5,800. I think is the most expensive pass catcher he has, and so I think it's a cheap stack. And even if you wanted to, because sometimes they do really spread the ball around here. I mean, hell, I played. I was Antoine Wesley last week, and the 2-game slate almost paid off. But even playing him naked, I think, is an option because of his rushing upside.
Yeah, the 12 points against Detroit, 16 points against Indy. I mean, those two defenses are worse than Dallas's defense. And Dallas is going to get a lot of pressure on Kyler, which he can struggle under pressure if he's not able to get outside the pocket and run, which I'm guessing Dallas will have a plan for that probably involves Micah Parsons chasing him around. So, yeah, I mean, he did have, 74 rush yards last week, but I mean, he's only had 4 attempts in the last 2 weeks as well, 4 attempts each. So it's we just haven't seen the high volume. Like he has one week this year of 10 attempts, and everything else is 7 or lower. And his yardage totals have been low this year. He's only got 3 over 50, which last year he was much more than that. So I don't know. Kyler's been a full-fledged passing QB this year, and I just feel like if he's going to sit in the pocket against Dallas, that's not. I just don't think that's how he can beat Dallas this week. And I don't know, that game to me just feels like it's a weird, trappy game.
I do too. I think it's a game that the Cowboys just get absolutely wrecked. Just absolutely wrecked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see it, actually, to be honest with you. But, I forgot we have a Cowboys fan in here.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any other quarterbacks you want to speak upon? I do think Russell Wilson at 62. Man, like every week Russell Wilson is so cheap, and every week I'm like, man, Russell Wilson is $6,200, and most every week we'd be like, smash play Russ Wilson against Detroit. How could this go wrong?
What you do is play him on the afternoon slate where there's less options.
Yeah, but
that's what I did last week, and he still sucked.
But I
didn't know it was a freaking snow bowl last week either. I didn't know it was supposed to snow in Seattle, and I turned on Red Zone, and there it is showing kickoff, and they're in a freaking blizzard, and I'm like, oh great, yeah, my Russ passing stacks would just look wonderful right now on the afternoon slate.
Well, and he hasn't scored more than 20 DK points since week 4.
Yeah, I'm out on Russ.
He's so cheap though. It's like I feel like I would just prefer, you're probably just better off just playing some of the pass catchers, whether it's Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf, and hope for the best, or Rashad Penny, but we'll get to that when we get to running backs. But it's just tough to save Russ Wilson at 6,200 and not having any interest in him whatsoever. And then Joe Burrow, no thanks. I'm out. People are going to be chasing last week's performance.
Yep.
And try to talk themselves into it. And I think there's a high probability that the Chiefs just smack the shit out of the Bengals.
I don't disagree. Like Kansas City's defense has been very good ever since they benched Sorensen, and it's like it's just that game and the Dallas game. They're the highest totals on the slate, but they just feel trappy to me. Like
that's kind of what I was trying to say earlier about it.
Yeah.
With there's like these games that everyone's going to want to play and everyone's going to want to attack, and then so far often than not, they end up not coming through, and then they don't turn out the way people think, and then I think he can get some pretty good leverage off that with it.
I agree.
So I don't know. I just like I don't know, something about this with Joe Burrow. I just do not love the Chiefs. The Chiefs defense has had one of the most craziest turnarounds I've ever seen, from just the bare minimum booty ass defense that they were.
They were the worst defense in the NFL. I mean, what was it? Who'd they play week 1? And we watched that game and we were like, oh my God. It was Cleveland.
Yes.
Cleveland and Baltimore back-to-back weeks. I mean, really, honestly, the first five games of the year, they gave up 29 to Cleveland, 36 to Baltimore, 30 to the Chargers, 30 to Philly, and 38 to Buffalo, weeks 1 through 5.
And then 27.
Since then, they gave up 13 to Washington, to 27 to Tennessee, 17 to the Giants, 7 to Green Bay, 14 to Las Vegas, 9 to Dallas, 9 to Denver, 9 to Vegas, 28 to the Chargers, and 10 to Pittsburgh. Like, it has gone from the worst defense in the NFL to one of the best. And I just, that game just feels trappy to me.
And then the Chargers game, the last Chargers game, they didn't have Chris Jones or Willie Gay in that game. And Chris Jones, that's huge. That's a huge piece for them not to have. So, anyways, I can't do it. I will have no Joe Burrow. I will not be chasing last week's performance for me. So, other than that, I think that's really all I've talked about. If Trey Lance does play at 4,800, it's really hard not to have some interest in him, even though he did not look good whatsoever the last time that we saw him take the field. But, he's getting all the first-team reps. Jimmy Garoppolo says he's going to try to play. A game against Houston, and I know what we saw last week, that they beat the Chargers, which was just typical Chargers. But I think that if I'm the 49ers, I probably because how limited are you going to be with that with the hand injury that he has. Like how effective is he going to be throwing the ball?
Yeah, he's probably not going to be very
And he has
effective.
no mobility whatsoever. He's an absolute statue back there. And so I don't know. Like if it was me, like I think I would go with Trey Lance. So if Trey Lance does play, I'm going to have some interest at 4,800.
I mean, it's hard not to. I mean, his last start against Arizona, he ran the ball 16 times for 89 yards. In his 2 starts, 20, or I don't even know if did he start that first week where he scored 21 DK points, or he come in for Jimmy. I think that's when Jimmy got hurt and he came in for him mid-game.
I believe that's correct, yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, he threw for 2 touchdowns, ran 7 times for 41 yards in a game he played half of, and scored 21 DK points, and then 16 DK points in the game that he started against Arizona with 89 rush yards. So, I mean, it's so hard not to just play that kind of guy at 4,800. It's going to come down to what your build looks like with a top end QB versus what you like with Trey Lance, to be honest.
Do you feel like with a slate this long, big, with 14 games, that it's more imperative to game stack than it is anything? Or no?
I think it's opposite. I think it's more imperative to game stack on the shorter slates, because if you get the one game that goes off in the short slate when everybody's trying to cherry pick, then you have the nuts, because everybody, like think about Thanksgiving slate, right? When it's only 3 games, everybody wants a piece of that early game. Everybody wants a piece of the 4:30 game, and then have 1 or 2 guys from the late game too. But if you just stack up like that middle game, and that's the one that goes nuclear, which it did, Vegas and Dallas, you win all the money on the short slates. Whereas, you've got the 14 games, when you have that many games, there's going to be more individual guys that hit ceilings across the board. So it's not as imperative to, full 5-man game stack a game. And that, to be honest, makes this slate even better to play Trey Lance, because you don't have to pair anybody with him. You play him naked at 4,800, and you just play all the dudes that you want to play, pretty much. And so you don't really have to game stack, which may be honestly the way that I end up going this week, considering, despite having 14 games on the slate, like you said, there's only 2 that are over a 46.5 total. The rest are 46.5 and lower. So, I mean, we could see a lot of, lower scoring games across the board where just individual guys are getting there in like a 24 to 21 type game across some of these games. So, yeah, I think you don't necessarily have to jam in a full stack on a slate like this.
Let's go ahead and jump over to the running backs, unless there's a quarterback that you want to talk about.
No, I'm good.
All right, so let's hit on some of these running backs here. We have Jonathan Taylor, who's 9K, and a great matchup against the Raiders. Then you have Austin Eckler, who is back, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, Zeke at 7,100, C-Pat at 6,900, Damian Harris at 6,600, 6,500, David Montgomery, Javonte Williams is 6,400, Ronald Jones at 6,300, Josh Jacobs at 6,200, Melvin Gordon at 6,200, James Conner, who returned to practice today, at 6,100, Rashad Penny at 6,100, and Saquon Barkley and Elijah Mitchell both at 6K. So at the running back position this week, I think it's a little bit different, but I don't view it all that outside of the top couple of guys, and then it's a lot of guys in the upper 7 and then the 6K range that I'm not sure how much interest I'm going to have, because I think this 5K range is absolutely loaded with options. But where are you coming in at?
Yeah, so I agree. Especially, it sounds like DeAndre Swift's going to play, right? Because he practiced in full.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday. I didn't see what his today practice looked like, but Seattle gives up like the most receptions and receiving yards to running backs. I mean, that's just what their defense funnels to. So it's really, really hard not to like 6K DeAndre Swift. I was ready to play him last week against would they play Atlanta? Or whoever Detroit played last week, but I was ready to play him last week at like 1% ownership, and he ended up being inactive. So I am absolutely ready to pull the trigger on DeAndre Swift against Seattle, assuming he plays. And it all goes back to kind of what I said last week too, is like this Detroit team has no reason to play Swift if he's even remotely injured, right? I mean, 2 wins on the year. If he's they're not going to limit him, and he gets there pretty much on. He doesn't need the 25 touches that the workhorse running backs get. He crushes on 15 to 17 touches, and that's because most of them come through the air, and I think that's what we see here. He's going to get high value touches, and he can house pretty much anything. So yeah, I have a ton of interest in Swift at 6K, and the other guy above 6K that I have heavy interest in is David Montgomery. We already mentioned that that's the nasty weather game of the week. The Giants are one of the worst rushing matchups or worst rushing defenses in the league, one of the best matchups. And Montgomery has been heavily utilized in the pass game over the last 4 weeks, pretty much in correlation with Allen Robinson going down. But 9 targets, 6 targets, 7 targets, 9 targets over the last 4. His key has just been if he can find the end zone, he gets you 20, 25 DraftKings points. I mean, he found the end zone in week 16, scored 24, found the end zone in week 13, scored 28, did not find the end zone in weeks 14 and 15 and got you about 15 points in those. So definitely has a great chance to score here against the Giants. So I really like David Montgomery at 6,500. Already mentioned Swift. In my blood, I just can't play a chalky Ronald Jones, but I mean, he's in a great spot too. I'm curious to hear what you're going to do with him at 6,300, but I'm assuming he's going to be one of the highest running backs on the slate. And then you can talk me through this 5K range because there's some names here that have decent roles, but I'm just not really, I guess, sold on the volume and the matchup. So kind of talk me through this 5K range and these guys that you're looking at down there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's quite a few options here. One with Ronald Jones, what worries me the most is he's Ronald Jones.
Right.
I don't think Ronald Jones is particularly good. I know it's a great matchup against the Jets, and things are a little bit different. I mean, he did carry the ball 20 times last week, but only for 65 yards. But I'm nervous because he does not get utilized at all in the passing game. And they do have other options. Keyshawn Vaughn and as well as Le'Veon Bell are both there. And I don't know.
I was listening to y'all's show last night, and you said Bell got carries last week.
Yeah,
right?
he got 2 carries. I actually was surprised. I didn't think he was even active. I don't remember hearing anything that he was active, but he was active, and he got 2 carries last week. And I feel like he would be somebody that they would look to utilize as a pass catching option. And it was kind of surprising he was even active because he had just got there.
Yeah,
and he was already active. And then we saw Keyshawn Vaughn, who preseason and offseason hype a couple of years ago. Get that 55-yard touchdown. But it just feels like there's so many ways this could go wrong. I mean, the Patriots aren't a team that are just going to sit there and hand the ball to Ronald Jones 30 times. And, this is a match against the Jets. We're going to get a little bit of a lead, and we're just going to turn around and hand the ball off to you. That's not the way they operate. I mean, they will continue to fire and throw the ball regardless of how big their lead is. And so it just worries me with Ronald Jones. And he's 6,300. And there's so many options that are below him that are cheaper than he is, that are in just as good a spot. Like Rashad Penny is cheaper than he is. And this is an offense that wants to run the ball, that their offense is built around running the ball. And this is a great matchup against Detroit. Last week, Rashad Penny played 52% of the snaps, 17 carries. He was only targeted one time, but 135 yards and a score. We've seen him now in 2 games against bad run defenses really be able to go off last week. And then, 2 weeks before that when he played Houston and he had another 136 yards and a couple scores in that game. And, the Lions allow the 3rd most DK points to running backs, the 6th most rushing yards, the 4th most rushing touchdowns on the year, and the 28th run DVOA. So Rashad Penny is in an absolute smash spot. And it's tough because it's Rashad Penny. And you just hope that, he stays healthy. But we've seen his ceiling to 2 of the last 3 weeks, right? And so for Rashad Penny, the upside's there, right? And then you have another, Sony Michel. Darrell Henderson's out. Cam Akers is supposed to come back, but I really, really would be surprised if they utilize him at all more than, probably 6-8 carries, something like that. That's probably it, right? So Sony Michel, over his last 4 weeks, is averaging 22 carries per game, 115 rushing yards per game, almost a touchdown per game, and about 16 DK points per game. And he's also running routes. I mean, he's running 20 routes per game, and he's seeing about almost 3 targets per game. Now, the tough part with him is that Baltimore like I've said, they are really solid against the run. 13th fewest DK points to running backs, 4th fewest rushing yards. But they have had, the 17th most rushing touchdowns. But they've been really beat through the air through receiving, through running backs, 6th most receiving yards and the 12th most receiving touchdowns through Baltimore. So I think he's an option. But the one I really might like the most is probably Devin Singletary versus Atlanta, right? Since the last 3 weeks, and this is against New England, Carolina, and Tampa Bay, 3 pretty good run defenses, right? These aren't just, just bad matchups that he's had here. These are really good run defenses, and he's played 82% of the snaps, seen about 13 carries per game, 4.5 targets per game, 87.6 total yards per game, and he scored 2 touchdowns over that span, and he's seeing 4 receptions a game. I mean, he's seeing 16 to 17 touches per game, and a great matchup against Atlanta. Atlanta's terrible against running backs, and he's getting all the work, 82% of the snaps over the last 3 games. I don't see why that changes here against Atlanta, right? Like, he's been the preferred pass catcher, and he's seeing pass catching work. So I like Devin Singletary quite a bit against this Atlanta run defense. So, I mean, between all these running backs, and then you have guys like Darrell Williams, who the Chiefs have shown much more of propensity to throw him the ball than they do Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And now with Clyde Edwards-Helaire looking like he's going to be out, he hasn't practiced yet. I guess there's still a chance he could come back. He's week to week with a bruised shoulder. But I don't see any reason why the Chiefs bring back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They don't really need him for anything. So I think Darrell Williams probably gets all the touches here, or at least probably 60% of it, because that's really what his role has been. But he's 5,800, and I think he's in a great spot. I was praying that James Conner was going to be out, because if he was, I was going to have a copious amount of Chase Edmonds at 5,700, because I mean he played 92% of the routes, ran 92% of the snaps, 73% of the routes last week without James Conner. Now it is a tougher matchup against Dallas. Dallas' run defense has been pretty good, but I think he probably would have saw 8-9 targets just like he did last week. But now I think with James Conner looking like he might be coming back, who got in a limited practice today, we'll have to see how he does on Friday. That lowers Chase Edmonds down a little bit for me. And then you have other guys here that are even a little bit cheaper. We'll have to see what's going on, because if Jordan Howard misses this game, Boston Scott might be the only running back standing at $4,900 against Washington, and a team that just wants to run the ball. Miles Sanders, we already know, is out with the broken hand, and then Kenny Gainwell would be another option, but he's not gonna. Kenny Gainwell practiced in full today, so we'll see on that. And then Jordan Howard is still tending to the stinger that he saw last week, and this is something that he dealt with in previous years. But so Boston Scott could really be the lead back here with Kenny Gainwell mixing in a little bit. Kenny Gainwell's not going to get a bunch of touches, so $4,900 Boston Scott could be very interesting.
Yeah, if Howard's out, he's definitely in play. I agree.
So we'll see. I mean, Jordan Howard, he got in a limited practice today, so we'll see on that. But those are kind of all the running backs to me in that 5K range that just really stand out to me. And then when you look at the top guys, Zeke doesn't really do a whole lot for me at 7,100.
No,
I think he just has a kind of a limited ceiling there at 7,100. Cordell Patterson, they've stopped utilizing him as a pass catcher out of the backfield. I don't know why. It doesn't really make sense, because I don't know. I guess all of a sudden they want to make Mike Davis a thing again. And so that hasn't happened. At 6,900, he's really tough to trust. I will not spend a single American dollar on $6,600 Damian Harris. I get it's against the Jaguars, but Ramondre Stevenson is coming back, and I think that's going to be a little bit of a problem for Damian Harris. And
I agree. If he plays, I'm not playing Harris.
Yeah, it changes if Ramondre is out, for sure, because he's going to get all the touches. But
yeah, so Harris and Rojo are kind of in the same bucket for me, because they don't catch passes. I mean, they're priced pretty much the same. Them sitting at 6K ish, they have to score 24 points to hit value, because you're pretty much looking for 4x. That 4x your 50K salary gets you to 200 points, and That's when you're contending for taking down tournaments. But 24 points is pretty much what Harris needs to get you just to hit value. He needs to score in the 30s to be a had-to-have-it kind of score. And, I mean, to get to 24 points with no pass-catching work, that's pretty much 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. You get you 10 points for the rushing, 3 points for the bonus, and 12 points gets you 2 touchdowns. So that puts you at 25. So, I mean, even if Harris runs for, 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, he's just barely hitting what the value you need, for you to be on pace with a, kind of a tournament winning score, but it's still not a had to have it kind of score at his price tag. So that's kind of why I'm going to be kind of out on Harris and Rojo. I mean, obviously both of them can score 3 or 4 touchdowns in these matchups, but touchdowns tend to be random. And so I'm just going to kind of play, the other side of it and just say, make these guys score these 3 or 4 touchdowns to burn me, because they're not going to be involved in the pass games. And we know that. So yeah. And it's just even amplified even more if Stevenson is active for New England. I mean,
well, he's done. So Ramondre Stevenson was back at practice today. So
yeah, so he's going to play. Yeah. Yes. So I'm out on Harris. I mean, he could very easily, run for 95 yards and score 0 touchdowns, and you're stuck with nine points. And 95 yards is a solid game on the ground. Like,
for sure. 100%.
If he doesn't score you those touchdowns, which he's 100% relied on this year. I mean, he's got 12 of them. So we've only seen one game. So he scored 31 points last week. He needed 3 touchdowns to do it. And his only other game over 20 points, he scored 28 back in week 7 against the Jets. He ran for 106 yards and 2 scores. So it's pretty much, I mean, he pretty much doesn't really have a ceiling, especially with Stevenson active. So despite the great matchup, I'm going to be out.
I 100% agree. Other than that, at running back, I do think Elijah Mitchell, if he's active, we've been waiting for him to come back for what feels like a month. Every week it's not he kind of floats that carrot out, but he's actually has returned to practice. He's gotten limited practice on Wednesday and Thursday, which is trending in the right direction. If he's able to go, the only concern I would have with him coming back from injury like this, and how long it's taken him, is he going to get the same type of workload that he was seeing prior to? Because prior to the injury, he was seeing 27, 22 attempts. He started to finally get involved as a pass catcher as well. 5 targets, 3 targets, but I would be there's a little concern that maybe do they mix in Jeff Wilson a little bit more and not just, bring him back and, expect him to, shoulder a load of, 20, 25 touches again. I would be surprised at that, but this is an excellent matchup against Houston. We've seen multiple running backs this year just absolutely smash this Houston defense on the ground. They've actually been much, much better through the air than they have been on the ground. And so Elijah Mitchell, though, still at 6K, I think is at least an interesting option.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess the other concern for me would be Trey Lance would be the vulture down at the goal line possibly. But there's also, I guess, a case you can make for playing both of them for 10K and get every single touchdown that the 49ers score. And they have the 5th highest total on the slate at 28 points. So I'm not necessarily against that. But yeah, there's concern that they eat into each other's ceiling, but you can play both of them and you pretty much get a 10K running back that's going to score 4 touchdowns.
Yeah. So, and DeAndre Swift is an absolute smash. Smash.
I honestly think I'm just going to start my teams with Swift and Montgomery.
Yeah. Swift at 6K is ridiculous. That is way, way too cheap, especially against Seattle. I mean, prior to, he was a guy that was up to about $7,300 prior to the injury, and you're getting him at 6K. So it's just a terrific matchup. I guess we'll talk about it when we get over to wide receiver. But yes, I think those are the guys so for me, it's really going to be, and I'll probably have some Jonathan Taylor because I play more lineups than you, and I'm not just going to have no Jonathan Taylor. I'm not an idiot. Like, I know.
Talk to me. Because a lot of people are going to have to decide on Taylor and Kupp. So what's they're pretty much priced the same. So what Sell me on why you're playing Taylor instead of Kupp.
Because I think that there's so with Taylor, one, I do think they're going to have Carson Wentz back. I do
I
expect that, and so that helps a lot because if they didn't have Carson Wentz, I don't know if I would actually have as much interest because it makes them pretty one dimensional because Sam Ehlinger is an absolute bum. And so with Wentz, as long as he plays, he'll still have to clear. He'll have to do so on Saturday. But if he can clear, we've seen Jonathan Taylor's ceiling this year at, he can drop he had 56.4, a game against Buffalo, right? And the Raiders have not been very good against the run all year. They've actually been really good against the pass. And I think you see the Colts really lean into that. And I think he's just almost guaranteed to see 30, probably 25 to 30 touches in this backfield in this game, whether with Carson Wentz, right? And so with his incredible ceiling, it's like I'm not just going to not have any. And just saying, I probably will have a little bit of Cooper Kupp as well. I'm not just going to full fade them, but I'm going to be well under their field than them, right? Like I still think Jonathan Taylor is still tough to get to because he's 9K. I'm just not going to be at anywhere close to what everybody else is. I will probably just be well under the field as them. But the rest of the running backs that are up here, not named Jonathan Taylor. I mean, Austin Eckler, I guess he's a decent play, but the Broncos' run defense, or their defense, has been really good. We've seen this matchup before from him. He scored 21.9. Not bad. Not a terrible game for Austin Eckler, but he's also 8,200. And so I think he needs more than if he only gets you 20 fantasy points. I'm not real happy about that. I don't think that's enough. That's going to get you to where you want to go. And so that's a tough matchup. Then you have Alvin Kamara, which is always tough. I mean, Taysom Hill sounds like he should be back this week, but I don't really know what his ceiling is. We haven't really seen a big ceiling from him. That's what you expect. I mean, Taysom Hill's a bum, and he's like a tight end, and since they haven't had the GOAT Jameis back there, hopefully Debro's still in the chat. We haven't seen the ceiling from Kamara, and then the other guys that are there, it just doesn't really strike much for me, and so that's why I just prefer paying down. I think David Montgomery is a great spot, like you mentioned. I'm gonna have I'll have a lot of Rashad Penny. I'm gonna play probably 70% DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
And then I'm going to mix in some of these other cheaper guys like Darrell Williams, like Sony Michel, like Devin Singletary are all going to be in my player pool of guys that I would much prefer to play. I just don't think any of the running backs, probably not named Jonathan Taylor, that are going to kill me. Or that stand out, they're going to kill me. Anything can happen on any given week, of course, but there's nobody up there that's like, oh man, if I fade this guy's got to kill me. Outside of maybe Jonathan Taylor is the only guy you can make a case for, I think, that really could hit that ceiling.
I agree 100%.
So I will definitely be living in that the lower 6 to 5K range. So that being said, let's jump over to wide receivers unless there's any other running backs you want to talk about.
No, I'm good. We pretty much hit on, I think, the bulk of the main guys.
All right, so wide receiver, we already talked about Cooper Kupp at 8,500. You have Deebo Samuel at 8,700. Can't do that either. $8,300. Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, 7,900. Jamar Chase at 7,600. Keenan Allen, 7,500. AJ Brown, the GOAT, my man, AJ Brown.
Boy.
Yep, Mr. Showdown winner himself. $7,200 AJ Brown. CeeDee Lamb at 7,100. T. Higgins at 6,900. Mike Evans at 7K. T. Higgins at 6,900. Jalen Waddle at 6,700. Amari Cooper at 6,600. Hunter Renfrow 6,500. DK Metcalf at 6,500. Tyler Lockett at 6,400. Devontae Smith 6,300. Terry McLaurin, I will not play any. I don't care if you paid me to do it, at 6,200. Antonio Brown at 6,100. And then Brandon Cooks at 6K. And Mike Williams at 6K. So, once again, if we're paying down at running back, who do you want to pay up for at wide receiver?
Well, it's really, really hard not to like Cooper Kupp. $9,500. I'm not sure I'm going to get there. I need to play around with my builds and see what kind of sacrifices I have to make elsewhere. Like I said, you're probably only comfortably getting there with the Trey Lance team, and that's going to be a very popular duo, unless actually taking that back just a step. I just pulled up ownerships while you were talking, and it looks like Jonathan Taylor is coming in at 24% with Kupp at only 14%. So it looks like, the field, they're going to have to choose. And right now they're siding with Taylor. So maybe the Lance Kupp pairing isn't going to be as popular as we think it will be. So that may be, a good way to go. It looks like everybody wants to play Jonathan Taylor this week, and for good reason. All the things you mentioned. But I mean, you just go through Cooper Kupp's game logs. This year, he's got one game where he didn't have double-digit targets, and in that game, he had 9. And he has 14 touchdowns on the year. He's chasing records, NFL records, in pretty much every category. And he is Stafford's go-to guy. And this Baltimore defense, we just saw what happened with Joe Burrow last week. So it's really, really hard not to like Cooper Kupp. And this Rams offense has, they've been, kind of slow out of the gate each game. So it's not like they've been blowing teams out. I mean, you go through Rams game logs and they have a lot of one possession wins, even against teams that, they should be blowing out, like the Detroit game. They beat Detroit 28-19, and Kupp had his biggest game of the year, scoring 41 points. So assuming Huntley can keep pace on the other side, which I think he can, I think this game stays, rather close pretty much the whole game. And it's a pass funnel defense. And it's really hard not to like Cooper Kupp. You're pretty much locking in 25 DraftKings points by playing him. And I know at $9,500, you need that, 35 to 40 point ceiling, but he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games over 30 points and 5 games over 35 points this year in 15 tries, which is pretty absurd. So there definitely is, a reasonable chance that he hits that ceiling. And we've seen those bigger games more so than we've seen them out of Jonathan Taylor. So we just mentioned, all those cheaper running backs that we like. So we can, comfortably make a team where we fill in Cooper Kupp as our pay up as opposed to Jonathan Taylor. So I definitely like him. These other guys at the top, I'm not really going to be on. I don't want to play Debo at 8,700 with Trey Lance at QB. I'm not going to play Tyreek at 8,300 in 7 days after he couldn't even play but a handful of snaps. Stephon Diggs is interesting. I'd like him more if the receivers were still out because he saw 13 targets last week with Beasley out and Gabe Davis missing as well. 7,900. He's really not going to burn me if I don't play him with a fully healthy receiver room, which they're getting back Cole Beasley this week. They're getting back Gabe Davis. Emmanuel Sanders is questionable, but I don't think that's enough for me to, kind of lock Diggs into that, 12 to 14 target range that he saw last week. So I'm kind of off him. I love AJ Brown if he plays this week. I mean, he pretty much showed us last week why he is the alpha there in Tennessee. 7,200 for a guy that can go over 30 TK points on any given slate is a very fair price. Mike Evans, 7K. We mentioned at the top how much we love Tom Brady, and Antonio Brown is currently checking in as the highest owned wide receiver on the slate at 37%. So if AB doesn't get the touchdowns, it's likely Mike Evans and it's likely Rob Gronkowski that are catching him. And Evans absolutely can go for 100 yards and 2 scores here against the Jets. And I know he's still got that COVID tag next to his name, but he was out there at practice today. So I'm assuming, they wouldn't let somebody that's still on the COVID list be out there practicing. So I'm assuming that he's going to be good to go for this week. I guess, there could be questions surrounding, his conditioning, like the Tyreek situation that we just had last week. And some of these other guys that have come back from having COVID and haven't seen a full complement of snaps. So that is a slight concern, but I mean, you have to have interest in him if you're playing Tom Brady. Outside of that, I mean, Devontae Smith is kind of interesting against Washington. I know it was Dallas Goedert that got the bulk of the passing points against them last go around, but it absolutely could be his turn this go around. And I mean, we've seen him 3 or 4 times clear into that 20 to 25 point territory, which he would need at his price tag. So I definitely think he's interesting, but he's not, somebody that I'm going to prioritize. Antonio Brown 6,100. I mean, that pretty much speaks for itself. We said last week, that he absolutely could get to 12 to 15 targets, and that's pretty much what he got. Seeing 15 targets last week. Brady is going to look his way very early and very often if he's out there. He didn't practice today, which is, something to monitor. It could just be a regular maintenance day, but he did have that injury before he was suspended. So if it was a flare up of the injury, that's definitely something worth monitoring there. And then we already talked about the Rams. I absolutely love OBJ at 5,700 against this porous Rams pass D, or this Baltimore pass D that has been a pass funnel all year, and now they're playing without any of their cornerbacks. So OBJ is the deep threat ever since he came over, and he is a guy that I'm going to prioritize this week. He's got, I think, 4 touchdowns in his 5 Rams games so far. So definitely like OBJ at 5,700. And I don't hate Van Jefferson as well. He is seen consistent volume even since OBJ came over. You're looking at 9, 8, 3, 2, and 6 targets. So there are a couple games in there that are kind of low volume, but he still has the ability to – he scored 3 touchdowns in those 5 games as well. So the ability to score is there. And like we said, this is a very, very good pass matchup for the Rams against Baltimore. So that's pretty much the 5K and up guys that I'm looking at. Who did I miss and who is below that range that you're looking at?
Well, I don't know if he said his name, but Jalen Waddle is 1,000% in play for me at $6,700. That is still just too cheap for the targets that he's seeing. I mean, if you look at the last 3 games he's played, 10, 11, 12 targets. Yeah, we've seen a 31.7 and a 25.2 DK point performances from him. And just $6,700 is just incredibly too cheap. Tennessee is a complete pass funnel. They are, great against the run, terrible against the pass. And so I love Jalen Waddle at $6,700. I'm going to have a lot of him at the price tag that he's coming in at. I think this could be a little bit back and forth here in Tennessee. There is some concern, I believe, with the weather there. I don't think it's anything crazy, but that game could be a little bit sloppy, so we'll see on that. But if it's not anything too crazy, I think Jalen Waddle makes for a ton of sense here. And I really like the skinny stack of Jalen Waddle and A.J. Brown. I like going there. I think those are the 2 that you could go with there, and it makes the most sense. In terms of Seattle pass catchers, I think I want one of these guys. 6,500 and 6,400 for their ceiling, especially Tyler Lockett. We saw him just 2 weeks ago drop a 30 burger. The deep threat here for Seattle. I think get this run game going with Rashad Penny. I think we could definitely see some play action with Tyler Lockett at 6,400. I like him. And then, I would love to be able to play Brandon Cooks, but again, he's been kind of hit or miss, right? But I will say with Davis Mills, we have really seen him just see an incredible amount of targets. And the 2 games Davis Mills has started, 10 targets, 11 targets the last 2 weeks. And, he is back this week coming off the COVID list. So that is also concerning, just like you talked about with Tyreek, coming off this COVID list. What is his conditioning like? Did he have any issues? We heard with Allen Robinson, right? Lost 10 pounds, due to COVID and everything else. Like, I don't know all this stuff. So he is a little bit risky, but the matchup is there. San Francisco isn't a defense you're really all that concerned with being able to pass the ball on. And then you have Amon-Ra St. Brown was something that immediately stood out to me when I saw his price. Because over the last 4 weeks, he has seen almost 12 targets per game. He is averaging 9 receptions per game, 85 receiving yards, almost a touchdown per game, and 22.4 PPR points over that span. And he gets an excellent matchup against Ugo Amadi, 78% completion percentage, 102.8 passer rating allowed. The only thing is there, and I think you brought this up last week, and I've seen some other people talk about it, is the splits without DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
But I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, I don't know if that's really the problem, if that's really why it happened. Like, I know that's easy to call that, but like Jamal Williams is a more than capable pass catcher, and it's not like we've seen Jamal Williams all of a sudden, get a ton of targets, right? I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, I can't imagine that they're all of a sudden going to be like, all right, DeAndre Swift, you're back. Now, Amon-Ra St. Brown, we're only going to give you 5 targets a game. That's how this is going to work. I just don't think that's going to happen. As well as he's played and as what he's been able to do, I don't think that he is going to see some huge reduction in targets, right? I think actually DeAndre Swift would take away from the other pass catcher, the other garbage ass pass catchers that they have there, versus taking him away from Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I don't necessarily disagree. I guess I just don't think that I can comfortably pencil him in for the 11 to 12 targets he's seen over the last 4 weeks. I think we're looking at more of like 8 to 9 with Swift coming back. And I mean, he hasn't cracked 100 yards yet this year. So, I mean, he's pretty much been reception and touchdown driven. Like over the last 4 weeks, those he scored a touchdown in 3 of them. And the 1 week he didn't score a touchdown, he had 8 catches for 73 yards on 12 targets, which was good for 15 points. So, I mean, I don't know. He's going to have to get in the end zone, and he's going to have to catch 8 to 10 passes because, I mean, he's not a deep threat. He's a very, very low ADOT kind of guy. And just, I don't know. I don't know that I can comfortably pencil him in for the 12 targets he's been seeing over the last 4 weeks. I think it's going to end up more in the 8 to 9 range, and he's going to catch 7 passes for 60 yards, and maybe he scores and gets you to 19 points. I don't know. I'm just going to take a wait and see approach with Swift coming back.
What's his ownership coming at? Because that's the one thing that I was the most curious about, because that's what would deter me.
He's not high actually. He's only coming in around 5%. He's like the 12th highest owned.
Slam him in. Lock him in.
You can play him there. Yeah.
Because that was my concern, because as well as he's playing as cheap as he is, I felt like there was going to be a lot of people that would not, that I feel like that his ownership, I thought his ownership would be at least in the 15 to 17% range. And a matchup that you're not really worried about with Seattle. Like, it's not like Seattle's pass defense really scares you. And so with him, if it's only going to be 5%, sheesh.
Yeah, like, I think it's because he's priced right next to Antonio Brown. Everybody's going to click that Antonio Brown button before they play Amon-Ra. And you can absolutely play both of them, but he's priced with guys like Brandon Cooks, Mike Williams, Antonio Brown, Terry McLaurin, Devontae Smith, Tyler Lockett, Ayuk.
But I mean, I think it's safe to say that he should be. I mean, he's been.
Oh, absolutely.
He's been excellent the last 4 weeks of the season. I mean, 24.8, 15.3, 23.5, 26. Yep. Like, he is giving you all of that, and at only $6K price tag,
If I knew he could keep his role from the last 4 weeks, I absolutely would have interest in him at $6K. I do have slight concern. If I was playing multiple teams, I absolutely would get exposure to him. But me playing, probably only going to play one team like I normally do. I'm going to go with Swift as opposed to Amon-Ra, and I'm not playing 2 lines.
Maybe the key is to stack the lines.
Stack the lines. Interesting.
Goff, Swift, and
you will definitely be a unique team there.
All the monies. That's the Millie Maker winner right there.
Yikes.
But I mean, he's also been really good with yards after the catch. He's actually 18th in the league in yards after the catch, 328. So, I don't know. I have serious interest in Amon-Ra St. Brown if he's only going to be 5% owned at that price tag at $6K.
Yeah, I think my final take on him is he's still going to have a good game. I just don't think it's a good enough game to burn me if I don't play him. Is kind of where I fall in with my line of thinking on him.
All right, and then so let's go down a little bit further with some of these other wide receivers. I think Christian Kirk is at a great spot at 5,800. He's seen almost on a regular basis now 20+% target share in this offense without DeAndre Hopkins. I know Dallas is there, but one thing with Dallas, especially with Trayvon, is they are very, very boom or bust. They especially with Trayvon Diggs, he's a ball hawk. Reminds me a lot of Marcus Peters, where he really tries to get those pick sixes, and sometimes will jump routes, and then he ends up getting burnt because of it. So, but I do think Christian Kirk at 5,800 at a game that they're going to have to throw the ball. I do like that quite a bit. We already talked about Odell. I don't need to say anything else about him. At $5,700 is incredibly too cheap for him as well. Some of the other wide receivers, like I have to, because if Manny Sanders is out, who missed practice again today on Thursday with that knee injury, Gabe Davis becomes pretty enticing at 5K.
Oh, absolutely. If Sanders misses, you have to But I mean, not only Davis, but McKenzie too.
Well, Cole Beasley's back, so I don't know how much that happens.
Yeah, but they still rotate in. It's pretty much a 4 wide receiver rotation. So like when they're all healthy, it's Diggs, Sanders, Beasley, and Gabe Davis. Like Gabe Davis still gets a handful of targets and can catch touchdowns, and even McKenzie still gets involved as a 5th guy when they're all there. So I would expect if Sanders were to be out, it'd be strictly a 4-man rotation, and McKenzie would be the 4th guy. And he's 4,300 after his blow up last week.
Yeah, that nobody.
I mean, he blew up last week.
Oh, for sure. 11 receptions. 125 yards and a score?
Yeah. So.
And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on Michael Gallup at 4,800? Because that seems too cheap for him as well. I know he's he's like the 3rd or 4th option, but we've seen plenty of games here where he's seen 9, 8, 10 targets this year. Now, the last couple of weeks, I throw last week's game out the window because it was a game that they dominated the entire game, and really just out the gate, that game was absolutely over with, and only people that were probably playing Showdown were still watching in the second half. Everybody else was just going to bed, or I guess you're a Cowboys fan. Which was a brutal thing to watch because I watched it because obviously I played Showdown and I had to watch that entire thing and I wanted to shoot myself in the face. That game was so boring. But then you had the Giants, right? Which is a game that they handled completely, for the most part, 21-6. They didn't have to throw the ball. But all the other games that have been close, I mean, you see 9, 9, 8 targets for him. And so, 10 targets before that. And so I think Michael Gallup at 4,800 is actually a pretty interesting spot, and I don't think he's going to come in with very much ownership either. And I think that he's somebody that could get there, especially at the price.
I actually really, really, really like that call. Last year, he had games of 29 points, 22 points, and 33 points. So it only happened 3 times. But he does. I mean, when you're playing a 4,800 guy, you're looking for somebody that does have a reasonable chance of hitting that ceiling, and he has that. I mean, he hit a tournament winning ceiling 3 times last year at this price, and this year, if you look at his game logs, he only has 1 touchdown, and he still has 3 games of double-digit points. In one of those games, he had 5 catches for 106 yards, which got him to pretty much 19 points. So you throw a touchdown on there, you're looking at 25 points, and that would absolutely be a tournament-winning score of $4,800. So if he catches a long touchdown, which is absolutely possible, and Dak finally looked back to, the Dak we're accustomed to last week. If Dak is going to throw for, 3 or 4 touchdowns in the highest total game of the week, we know he spreads the ball around, and Gallup is their deep shot guy. Gallup actually leads the team in air yards per game at 86, just ahead of CeeDee Lamb, who gets 84, and Cooper gets 79. So he's got the deepest ADOT on the team of 12 per, leads the team in air yards per game, 28%. So yeah, 4,800 for Michael Gallup in a game that's got the highest total of the week is somebody I absolutely love that call.
Especially when you look at some of these other 4K wide receivers that we have, and there's not a whole lot that stands out to me.
Yeah,
in terms of just who certain guys you could play. So I just as I was kind of looking at initial pricing and everything, it's something that really stood out to me at his price tag of 4,800, and I think he has a real decent ceiling compared to what his price is. So
I agree, and before the season's over, I think we do see a Gallup 25 plus point game, and everybody's gonna be like, well, why didn't I just play this guy who's getting deep shots from Dak Prescott on one of the best offenses in the NFL at $4,800, right? So it's like eventually these deep shots are going to hit for a touchdown, and if you're just playing probabilities that if they're going to happen and they haven't happened yet, just play them, and you'll be on the right side of variance. And then after it happens, everybody's going to say, "Oh, well, it just happened; it can happen again." And you're going to say, "Well, now I'm not going to play him because the odds tell me, that he can't repeat that again." So, yeah, I know I love the call. Get on it before it happens, and Michael. I guess we're going to dub this Michael Gallup week.
Let's go. All right. So before we jump over to tight ends, are there any cheap wide receivers that you have any interest in the 4 to 3K range? or the 3K range?
I don't have interest, but how weird is it that Allen Robinson is $3,800? I'm not playing him, but if you told me before the season started that consensus third round pick Allen Robinson in season long leagues would be $3,800 at some point on DraftKings this year, I would have told you you're crazy.
I would be a liar if I didn't say that I have been monitoring his situation this week. And if he somehow were to play, that I wouldn't have at least a marginal interest in a matchup against the Giants. It would be very small. It would probably be like, one or two lineups that I would throw him in there because I don't know. It would just be this. It would just be so 2021, or I guess at this point it'd be 2022 for Allen Robinson just to all of a sudden have a big game out of nowhere and have zero ownership, and he's only $3,800. But no, I mean, there's no points that pointing to saying that he's a great play, especially when we get the reports that he lost 10 pounds.
Yeah.
So
I guess probably the only guy down in this range, like below 4K, Zay Jones kind of stands out. He's got 17 targets in the last 2 weeks. And you can throw on Indy as well. They don't defend the deep passes very well. And we've seen him kind of, Derek Carr has taken a liking to Zay Jones. So 3,900 is, I don't hate it.
Well, and that's the other guy I was going to bring up was, Antoine Wesley, the same guy I just talked about. The last 2 weeks, he has seen 12 targets. Here at 8 against Detroit, 4 against Indy, which wasn't as good there. But he also could have had a touchdown, the second touchdown there. He targeted multiple times in the red zone, and he's only 3,600. They've been targeting him. Now, I don't think he has an incredibly high ceiling, but at 3,600, he doesn't need to do a lot. He catches one of those touchdowns, and kind of like what he did last week, with even 12, 14 fantasy points, something like that, depending on what you're wanting to do. If you're looking for some salary relief at 3,600, I will say that with Rondale Moore back this week, but I believe Rondale Moore played week 15 whenever he saw 8 targets in that game as well. And, I believe Rondale Moore was active. I know Rondale Moore was out this past week, but he against Indy. But regardless, I still think Antoine Wesley at $3,600, somebody that completely I was caught off guard by, was not expecting. And then I played a lot of him last week in the 2-game slate. And he's somebody that Kyler Murray has been looking for, and really almost made a really, really nice catch at the end of that game.
Mm-hmm.
Just didn't get there. But anyways, that's kind of it. There's nothing that really stands out to me other than that. And even that, I still think is probably a pretty thin play. I don't think it's really necessary to get there. But
yeah, on a 14-game slate.
And I would love to talk about Tyler Johnson, but man, I mean,
or Scotty Miller.
Tyler Johnson had good old 0 targets last week. Big old goose egg.
Yeah, because Scotty Miller, he's a deep threat. So, when he catches one, I mean, he absolutely could have one catch for 50 yards and a touchdown and score you, 13 fantasy points. But, I mean, again, at that point, you're hoping for to catch lightning in a bottle, and that's just to get, 13 points. So, I think it's too thin, even if playing the Jets.
I mean, Josh Palmer maybe an option. He's probably the number 3 wide receiver for the Chargers, especially with Mike Williams. He's coming back from COVID. Same kind of
deal too.
Guyton's back, yes, but Josh Palmer, 15. If one of those guys were out, then I would have more interest in him. But other than that, I don't really think there's a whole lot here. I mean, we haven't, thankfully, with the change in the COVID rules, we've got a lot of these guys back, and it seems like it's died down a little bit, so that is also a positive. So it's not really impacting. So let's just go ahead and jump over to tight ends, which is going to be super interesting because you have just elite Mark Andrews.
A new king at the top of the tight end list.
Yes, 70.
The last time it hasn't been Kelsey or Kittle.
It is odd seeing that. It is odd. But you have Travis Kelsey at 7,300, Kittle at 71, Waller, who was placed on the COVID list, so and dealing with that other issue anyways. He's 6,300, but I don't think he's going to play. Gronk at 6,200, Kyle Pitts at 5,900, Dawson Knox is 55, Gesicki is 5,300, Zach Ertz is 5,200, Dallas Goedert is 5,100, and Dalton Schultz is 5K. So, one, if you're going to pay up a tight end, which one are you going to target? Is it going to be Mark Andrews? Is it going to be Kelsey? Is it going to be Kittle? Or I guess Gronk, I guess, kind of fits that. But which tight end do you have the most interest in?
Oh, man, it's so tough. I would love to say Kittle, but I just don't know with Trey Lance what he's going to do. I just can't confidently, project him for a ceiling game here. As good as the matchup is against Houston against tight ends, but when you pay $7,100 for a tight end, I mean, you pretty much need that 30-point game. And at this point, I mean, with Kelsey coming back off COVID, we just saw Tyreek play limited snaps. There's uncertainty with Kittle's involvement with Trey Lance. I mean, at this point, Mark Andrews has asserted himself as the alpha tight end at the top of the fantasy leaderboard. So as crazy as it is at 7,400, if I was paying up, I think I would just play Mark Andrews. We've seen these tight ends, these big tight ends play the Rams, and Jalen Ramsey will occasionally end up on them, but it's not, a situation where, Jalen Ramsey's just going to cover Mark Andrews over and over and over again. So I'm not necessarily worried about, Mark Andrews' ability to catch passes here. I mean, you would think if that was the case, somebody over the last 3 weeks would have done that to stop him. And I mean, he's got 11, 13, and 10 targets. Has gone for 30, 32, 39, and 30 DraftKings points over the last 3. So at some point, I guess he's going to fall off that cliff because it's not sustainable to score 30 DraftKings points every single week. But I mean, he's the guy you feel really good about paying up for. But if I'm going to pay up even a little bit, I think I'm just going to play Gronk at 6,200. I mean, the Gronk double touchdown game is coming, and what better week to do it than against the New York Football Jets? So I know I was on Gronk last week, and he didn't do anything. He had 3 points against Carolina, only saw 2 targets. But, I mean, the weeks before that, you're looking at 8, 9, and 11 targets, and I think we get back to more of that, 8 to 10 target range for Gronk this week, especially if Mike Evans is somewhat limited due to, coming back off COVID and having conditioning question marks and also dealing with that injury that he sustained to his hamstring the same game Godwin got hurt. And AB, he didn't practice yesterday as well, or I'm sorry, today as well. And he had that injury before he got suspended. So definitely some situations there to monitor. Gronk is the healthiest pass catcher that they have at the moment, $6,200 against the Jets. If you told me Gronk caught 2 touchdowns against the Jets, I absolutely would believe you that happened. So I really like Gronk this week and think that he is the guy that I'm going to pay up for. As far as paying down, I think Goddard's interesting. It's not really a pay down, but 5,100. We just saw him absolutely demolish this Washington defense 2 weeks ago. 135 yards, didn't score a touchdown, still scored 24 fantasy points. So he scored you a touchdown there, and you're looking at another 30-burger, which he was able to do with Minshew at QB against the Jets. So Goddard's interesting. He definitely has a ceiling here. Outside of that, I'm not sure I'm going to get to any of these cheapies this week. I guess Foster Moreau is interesting still if Waller's out. He's been getting, a handful of targets each week and absolutely has the ability to catch a touchdown. So you could be looking at like a 15 to 17 point game with Moreau if he's able to score a touchdown for you. And Indy, they're one of the worst at defending the tight end. So definitely a possibility there. But below that, I mean, you're the famous dumpster diving tight end guy. So is there anybody down that's cheaper than Moreau at 3,800 that you're looking at?
I still think Brevin Jordan is in play. I've talked about him so many times, but he's still only 2,800. Continues to see. I mean, the last 3 games that he's played, 4, 7, and 4 targets, which 4 targets isn't a ton, but I mean, last week 4 catches, 56 yards, scored 9.6, 12.6 before that. I mean, but at $2,800, I mean, that's not gonna, that doesn't kill you, and allows you to fit in some other things. But if you're gonna pay down, I think him at 2,800 does make quite a bit of sense. If you're wanting to pay Ricky Seals-Jones at 3,300, we always want to target Eagles with a tight end, and Ricky Seals-Jones is only 3,300. Only saw one target last week, but the last time these two teams played, he saw 7 targets in that game. And that was with was that Garrett Gilbert or whatever at quarterback, I believe. And so in that game, yes, that was the game that Heineke missed. And I think Garrett Gilbert was the quarterback in that game. Yeah. But he's only $3,300. So I think he is in play. I think Cole Kmet, I think, is an interesting option at 3,400. He has started to see a rise in targets as well, really over the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season. So I think he's still pretty cheap at $3,400. So if you wanted to go him, I think that is another direction that you could go. And then I think, and then Zach Ertz at 5,200. I mean, the guy has 13 targets last week, 11 targets the week before that. But I mean, he's not doing a lot with them though either. I will say, because he hasn't found the end zone. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week 11, so that does limit him a little bit at $5,200. But I think he could get there against Dallas. And you have Dalton Schultz, who's only 5K as well. He has scored 20 plus DK points each of the last 2 weeks. If I'm going to pay up a tight end, if I'm going to pay up in the 7, I mean, really, obviously, it's hard to get away from Mark Andrews, but I will say with Kelsey, the only thing that I would say with them is that Cincinnati has been really bad against tight ends this year. They allow, I believe, the 4th most or 5th most DK points to the position, 997 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns on the year for the Cincinnati Bengals. So, I mean, that is one weakness that they have definitely had. And so, if it's, I think for me, it's going to come into ownership if I'm going to pay up for one of these tight ends, because I think all of them hold a very similar ceiling, right? All of them could get you 40, and they all probably have at least decent to safe floors. I think Trey Lance probably, if Trey Lance starts, it probably really hurts Kittle. But if not, I think between the 3 of these guys are all right here with each other. I think it's going to really play off of ownership for me.
They're all 5%. They're all Ertz and Gronk is the chalky tight ends.
That's okay. If Gronk is chalk, I will have.
And when I say chalk, he's at 11%.
Okay, that's not
Ertz
bad.
is 12. So tight end is pretty spread out. So it's Ertz at the top at 12 to 13%. Gronk's at 11, and then everybody else is 8 or lower, with Kelsey, Andrews, and Kittle all at the 5 to 6% range. So it's not, when I say chalk, it's not really high enough that it's like concerning, that I would fade him. Like Antonio Brown, 37%. God, anything can go wrong with that situation. I mean, he can get hurt in the first quarter, and 37% of teams are dead. I mean, it's football, right? Like anything can happen. So 11% isn't too high to where I'd.
No, it's not. That's not bad at all.
But yes, the 3 big boys are not high end.
Well, then that changes things. So then I would probably just split up some ownership between Andrews and Kelsey. If I have to take a stand on one versus the other, I probably would lean towards Mark Andrews.
It's crazy.
I don't know. I don't know. The only thing that concerns me with Kelsey is just the COVID stuff, him coming off the COVID list. Mm-hmm. Not knowing that, and what condition he's in, is he fine or whatever.
Now,
if this is a completely healthy Travis Kelce, I would go Travis Kelce.
Yeah, the thing too, well, the Tyreek situation, thinking about like how the Chiefs handled it. I mean, Tyreek pretty much came off the list and then played the next day.
Right. That was completely different. Yes, this is a completely different situation.
So Kelsey's had a full blown week, and he's practicing in full, which is a good sign. And I guess I would assume that Kelsey's going to operate as normal here.
With that, I would probably lean towards Kelsey.
I would probably lean Kelsey as well.
Yeah. So especially if Lamar plays, if
Lamar looks horrible. There's no shot he plays.
You're right, but I don't know. I don't know. He may be able to talk his way into getting into playing. So I don't know. We'll see. But
he was DMP today, right, Lamar? After that video came out of him yesterday, basically looking like he was on a pogo stick getting down the field.
Yeah, he didn't practice.
Limping. Yeah. So I think it's going to be Huntley, which is good for Andrews. But
yes. All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump over to tight ends. We're at an hour and a half.
all right.
We let this one get away from us, but this is such a huge slate. So at defense, I don't know, like nothing at the bottom like really stood out to me. At least at like the real bottom of the barrel options this week that typically would. Is there anything for you that's just an obvious like something? Because I do think if Trey Lance played, I would have a little bit of interest in Houston.
Yeah, I mean, even then, they're still 2,600.
But other than that, like the Falcons against Buffalo, I mean, not really. The Jets against Tampa Bay, no. The Lions against I guess the Lions. The Lions was the other one that really kind of stood out to me, especially with
yeah.
But I just don't know how much they throw the ball, so I think that would kind of limit them of what they're really able to do.
I know it's not. I know we don't pay up, but I probably am just going to do what I can to get to the $3,200 Bears at home against the Giants in that god awful weather. And again, I mean, the Giants could just run the ball and do very short passes and not make mistakes. But if the Bears are able to get any sort of a lead and the Giants have to throw, I mean, the Bears are one of they have one of the best adjusted sack rates on the year. And I mean, if you look at the offenses that the Bears have had to play since week 5, Vegas, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, San Francisco, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Detroit, Arizona, Green Bay, Minnesota, and Seattle. I mean, like that is a gauntlet of offenses that you're playing against there. And I mean, they still have one of the best adjusted sack rates in the NFL. So I really like the Bears. If salary wasn't a thing, I would probably just pick them anyways. And with none of these super cheap options standing out, I may just get to them. But I also will say if I need the $400 like really badly, I don't hate the Giants on the other side of that game too at 2,800.
No, I don't think that's. I don't think it's crazy. I will say if Carson Wentz wasn't able to make it back, the Raiders at 2,700 against Sam fucking Ellinger, I think would make some sense.
Lock button.
Yeah. And then the Chargers I think would be interesting too at home against Drew Lock. Drew Lock, it has that I don't give a fuck. I'm just gonna chuck it here mentality. And so the Chargers with their defense, Joey Bosa should be back. So the pieces they were missing last week should be back for this week. So they're only 3,100. I think I could see myself doing that as well. But other than that, there's not really any like really super obvious pay down options. If I had to choose one, it probably would be the Lions at 2,400 against Seattle. I don't think they have an incredibly high ceiling. I don't think there's something that's going to be able to, has any sort of path to like 15, 20. But like we've seen with them for the most part this year, I mean, 6, 8, 5, 4. I mean, as long as they're not like killing me, I don't really hate it either. I think they could be at least be, if they can get me 6, 8, I'm not mad about that.
Yeah, if I agree. I would be fine with punting with the Lions. If I had to pick, I'd probably just pick Washington. If you made me punt. I mean, with the running back injuries they're dealing with, maybe Hurts has to throw the ball a little bit more than they typically want to. And, we've seen Hurts make mistakes and have turnover-worthy plays through the air. So, and they just, 2 weeks ago scored 7 points against Philly too. And Washington is a pass funnel defense. So if Philly wants to run the ball with hurt running backs, and then they get into, a lot of third and long situations where they have to throw, turnovers can happen there. So Washington would probably be my pick, but I'm good with the Lions too.
Okay. Well, that pretty much sums up this slate. Went a little bit longer than we normally do, but before we do, we have to build this lineup that we build every single week for Draftkings. So, Maddie, where are we starting?
After the heater that you've been on, and like we've both turned around our seasons ever since you started going first. I'm not gonna allow me to pick first. You have to start us off.
All right.
You don't have to pick a QB, but you got to start us off.
Brand, AJ Brown.
All right. Well, if you're going Brown, I'm going to go Waddle.
And then we're going to play Swift.
And David Montgomery.
All right. Need to figure out a quarterback.
Just do it. I know you want to.
What's that?
The old $4,800.
Yeah, but I don't know if he's going to play. Because I know Garoppolo said that he felt confident he was going to be able to return this week.
Yeah, with a grade 3 UCL tear in his right thumb. That sounds real confident. If Garoppolo starts, I will be playing the Houston defense. Not kidding. Not kidding.
All right. I'm going to lock in Stafford.
All right. OBJ.
Let's go Lions D.
Michael Gallup, por favor. Leaves you $3,600 for a tight end. It's gross down there.
Let me see.
The other option, I guess, would be to change OBJ to Van Jefferson, and then you get a 4K tight end. But I'm not sure that the gap. I'd rather just play OBJ, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's no tight end at 4K that really, I guess Moreau is fine, but it's not like he's going to score 25 points.
What if we played Brevin Jordan at tight end, and then that left 5,600 at flex? Is there anything else that would stand out there?
I'd rather just play the Bears at defense and keep Gallup.
Fuck it. That's what we're doing. No money left remaining. So we have Stafford, DeAndre Swift, Montgomery, AJ Brown, Waddle, Odell, Brevin Jordan, Michael Gallup, and the Bears D with 0 remaining salary. We're gonna lock that SOB in. I like that lineup.
Yeah, that one's fun. It's definitely unique. The AJ Brown Waddle mini stack is going to be so like nobody's going to play that. I like that a lot.
I'm looking forward to rooting on Brevin Jordan again. All right,
Love it.
That one has been locked in. So, other than that, I guess you haven't even mentioned it. I guess it is New Year's Eve. Are you doing anything for New Year's Eve?
Nope. I have a pregnant wife, so that's pretty much.
That's when you make them drive, and then you just they're the DD, and then you can.
You're not wrong, but no, we don't have any plans this year.
It's probably smart, to be honest with you. I don't really go do anything anymore. I just stay home and chill. Probably watch the college football playoffs.
Yeah, I don't even know. I mean, I typically stay up late, but I can't tell you last time I like sat down and watched the ball drop. And usually my wife's asleep by then. She goes to bed super early, so it's like, hooray! I'm up watching it. Just chilling by myself. But we typically don't do much for New Year's. I mean, we've gone out, when we were, a few years ago with friends and stuff, but just kind of gotten to that point where, it's cheaper and less of a hassle to stay in than it is to go out.
Yeah, and it's such a train wreck.
It's bad. It's bad.
You definitely have to get an Uber. But Uber marks the shit up, like
Uber or a hotel room where you can just walk from the bar to the hotel. Yeah.
Yes, because
Uber's about costs as much as a hotel room on New Year's.
Yes, they do, and so yeah, it's just
it's crazy.
It's just not. I'm not about that life anymore. So yeah, I will not be doing anything. But I will say this: I don't know if anybody else, especially like in the chat, felt this way either. Was like not having the NFL today. Normally, I'm like, I hate Thursday night games, but not having Thursday night, I'm like, oh my god, it takes forever to get to the NFL like without the Thursday night game.
Dude, and also I was looking for today. It's finally the 31st, but I was looking for another excuse to lower my taxable income on DraftKings. So I needed another slate to just throw a shit ton of money at, and if you win, you win a lot of money, and if you lose, you lower your taxable income. So that's what I was hoping for to have today, but we do not have that. So maybe I just need to play a ton of NBA tomorrow and give some money back.
I might play NBA tomorrow. Like, it felt like really weird not having the NFL. And not having a game on this week, like it just makes the week feel like it's so much longer because it's like, okay, you have 2 days, you got a game, then after that you got another 2 games, and then you got NFL Sunday, you got Monday, and hell, next week we don't even have Monday because we're gonna be rolling into last week. Then, but I will say that I was looking at I will say this too. Like normally week 18, like when it comes to DFS too, it's usually pretty gross because a lot of teams are sitting a lot of their starters. I don't think we're going to have that this year. There's so many teams that are bunched up that have stuff to play for that I don't think that's going to happen.
And not only that, but also with how they've changed kind of the playoff situation. You've got 14 teams that make it now. It's 7-7, and only the top 1 seeds on each side get a bye. So 2 through 6, or 2 through 7 have to play. And with that being said, I mean, the number 2 seed who normally has maybe has a comfortable lead and can kind of sit on a first round bye. They're trying to take away that bye from the first overall seed this year. And like you said, the NFC is really bunched up. I mean, there's a lot of 10-5, 11-4 teams sitting right there together. So yeah, I don't think we're going to have a ton of starters sitting this year, which is interesting.
Even the AFC, there's only one team in the AFC so far that's clinched the playoffs. That's the Chiefs. And like, if Tennessee is really the only team. I guess if the Chiefs lost out, that would change. But I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. But for the Chiefs to clinch the first round bye this week, you need Tennessee to lose and the Chiefs to win. Then they would clinch. Mm-hmm. No other team can catch them. Then I would say, okay, yeah, they're one team that could probably rest their starters, right? Next week, and they play the Broncos next week. But that's it. That's the only scenario. If the Titans win, even if the Chiefs win, they're still going to have to play their starters because they're going to have to beat Denver to be able to get that first round bye. On the NFC side, you have the Packers, who they're in a very similar situation that they're going to have to play obviously their starters this week, and for them to be able to sit their starters next week, I'm not sure exactly what the tiebreakers are for them, but I mean it's going to be kind of the same thing. You have like three teams that are all sitting there with only 4 losses that could steal a spot from them. So I mean, again, unless all those teams lose this week, that's about the only way they're going to be able to clinch. And so, like, it's pretty interesting with that we're pretty much going to have everybody on the slate. Like normally week 18 or week 17 years past for DFS, it's always like, let's play really light. You're going to have so much uncertainty. Yeah. Like this week, this next week does not feel that way. At least for me. At least that's what I was looking at.
Especially too, because you got the Bengals playing Kansas City. So that's, a potential future playoff matchup. And you've got Arizona and Dallas who are playing each other. So that's four of the top teams on either side playing each other this week. So that's definitely going to affect, those 2 games will affect how the playoffs shake out, the seeding. So yeah, I agree. I think week 18 is going to be fun. I haven't looked at any of the matchups yet. I'm surprised you haven't. But
I have.
Oh, you have.
Actually, when me and Walito got off the show last night, me and him talked for a while, and we were looking at some of that stuff. That's where it got me thinking about all this. And the matchups there are for next week are like there's really only like 2 games where like there's like teams in a game that will have nothing to play for, that the teams are out. Like there's really only I think it was like 2 or 3 games total of the 15 game slate, or I guess 16 game slate. But one of those games is going to come off. Obviously, it's going to be a Sunday night game. But regardless. Though I do think DraftKings should just make it 1 slate. Just make it the main slate should include the Sunday night. They should.
Yeah.
They won't, but they should.
No shot they do, but yeah, that would be.
And then we'll be on to one of my favorite time of the years, and that's the NFL playoffs, NFL playoff DFS. And I swear to God, if DraftKings does something stupid and makes it a mini main slates on Saturday, Sunday, and then the Monday showdown for the wild card weekend, I'm going to be real upset because that would really frustrate me.
They'll probably have both. I'm just curious which one they're going to cater to with the bigger contests.
They need to make it just Saturday, Sunday, like always. Leave the Monday night games they're going to have.
Yeah.
Yes, a showdown, and do it like they always do it with Saturday and Sunday. Because there's so much. There's so many pivots and everything else that you can make. But from the Saturday to the Sunday slate, where you're kind of looking at all your team, making some changes, and then let's be honest, people are still going to play just the Sunday only slate, to get more action, all their dead lineups. I need to put more money in here, and get some different, So that's all. Anyways, we're just rambling now. So all that being said, I think there is, we still have a lot of good football left. So I hope everybody has a great week. I hope everybody has a great weekend. I hope everybody has a great New Year's Eve. If you do go out, hey, try to stay safe. Take an Uber. Don't drive.
Yep.
I'm not your dad, but DUIs cost a lot of money. Just not worth it. Pay the $30, $40, $50 it is for an Uber or walk. Or call somebody. If you're in Kansas City, call me. I'll come pick you up. I ain't got nothing going on. But, I'll start, hey, $5 trip. I'll take you wherever you want to go in the metro area.
There you go.
And we'll talk about DFS the whole time. With that being said, I hope everybody has a good weekend. We will be back live Saturday night. We are going to do what is called our annual free-for-all, where we literally drop the show link into the chat for you to jump onto the show with us to join us, talk. We're going to talk about, obviously talk about fantasy football. Fantasy championships are this weekend. It's a big weekend for all the redraft guys out there. So, but if you have star-sit questions, you want to talk about the NFL, you want to talk about music, you want to talk about TV shows, movies, whatever, we don't care. This night to kick it with everybody, right before, everybody recovering from New Year's Eve and getting ready for the fantasy championship. That's what we're going to do. It'll be Saturday night about 9 o'clock Central, like we always do. Same time we go live. We'll go live Saturday night. We did it last year, and I'm not going to lie to you. We were a little nervous because we're like, man, I hope we don't get somebody with a dick pic or something, just dick all on the screen. You just don't know what you're going to get. Luckily, we didn't. We did have somebody that was laying in their bed with their shirt off. So when they first came in, we're like, whoa. And we're like, okay, never mind. He was cool. He didn't have any of those issues. But other than that, it was actually a lot of fun. Just bring random people on, talk about whatever. They would ask questions about process stuff, whatever, answer questions, or then they would answer questions. So it's a lot of fun. And it's unique. It's not something that a lot of people do. And you can just jump on with us and just have a good time. So it will be tomorrow night at 9 Central. Or not tomorrow night, I should say. It should be Saturday night. So come join us, RC Cola in the chat. Come join us. You've been here all year. Come join us. Kick it with us. Walito probably will jump on. I don't know what Maddie's got going on Saturday night. Maybe if he wants to jump on for a little while.
Might be able to make that work.
It'll be a good time. Have some beers, whatever, hang out. So, anyways, with that being said, I hope everybody has a good weekend. Let's win some fucking money this weekend. Be sure to jump into our free Discord. It's absolutely free. DFS, redraft, whatever. You can jump in there. We can talk about some of that stuff as well. But other than that, I hope everybody has a great weekend. And let's win some money this weekend. Have a great holiday. We'll see you next week for the Week 18 slate. We out.